Nice, how fun. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. Brendan Rothwell.
You got it.
Brendan Rothwell, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Brandon is, I believe, kind of my neighbor. We both live here in Altadore.
We do.
And Brandon, maybe why, when I was in touch with you recently through Facebook Messenger, I had learned that we had been in touch previously. Did you notice that or note that?
I did, yeah, I did. And, I'm keen to understand folks that are around this neighborhood. This is, where I live and where you live. And there's been some interaction and, interest in music or interest in real estate. We all have the same kind of shared interest, right? So.
Right. No, about 2 years, maybe 3 years ago, we both live fairly close to 38th Avenue and 17th Street, 18th Street.
Yeah.
And there was a development, corner lots, bungalows were purchased,
right.
1915 bungalows, and there was a development from Willix to build fourplexes.
Right.
I think we were at a meeting together.
We would absolutely have been at
Was that in your home?
Together. No, that was another neighbor of ours a street away. So yeah, I'm on 18th Street.
Okay.
So the new development from Willix is at the south end of my street.
Okay, so that's a little bit, and as we get into the conversation, I mean, we live in this neighborhood that I've been here since 2003, and you've been here, I don't know how long, and we'll get into it. And it's changed dramatically from having these like 1950s bungalows to, quite large infills, attached homes.
Yeah.
So that's, I think that was probably when we first met in person, maybe 2 or 3 years ago,
right.
where, the community, I think the vibe of us at that time was, can we shut these infills down from these corner lots? Because the zoning, when we all purchased in that area, was R2 zoning, meaning duplexes were allowed.
Right.
But as you're aware, or many are aware or not aware, that in the inner city, the city has now mandated higher density, and they're really promoting all these corner lots to turn into fourplexes.
Activating the corners, yeah. Yeah, okay.
So that's how we originally met. But in
Right.
any case, Brandon, maybe we'll start out with what strikes you most about living in Calgary, and maybe particularly Marda Loop area? Maybe.
Sure. Well, my accent will give away the fact that I maybe wasn't born here. So I'm from the UK originally, and I lived in London from my late teens until mid-30s. So my wife, Lisa, and I both moved here in 2005. And we've done quite a bit of research, and we've done some, in air quotes, vacations to Canada,
right.
which were really fact-finding and potential work-finding trips. We hit Calgary a couple of times. We did a weekend in Toronto from London, which was crazy, but we managed it.
Yeah.
It was 35, right?
Can do that, yeah.
Yeah, we did Vancouver, and everywhere is cool, and all the people here are cool because there's a lot less of us, which is a very attractive thing if you come from 9.5 million people in London.
Right, a lot less people, you say?
Less people,
yeah.
more space.
Okay.
We don't get in each other's way. It's
yeah.
not as, crazy.
Yeah.
We landed on Calgary for a number of reasons. We had some friends that were already based here. I had a couple of opportunities for work. So we took the plunge. We a couple of one-way tickets to Calgary, and we landed here in 2005 and kind of never looked back,
Wow.
It's a big deal. We originally were based in Tuscany for a whole schwack of reasons.
Right.
Beautiful part of town, not right downtown, which for us was appealing at the time. As life goes on and life gets a little bit more involved, we decided that nearer downtown would be more useful for us. So
Right.
we spent probably 6 months kind of looking around most of the areas that would be obvious. Altadore had always been attractive, for sure. And we were able to get in here in 2013. So
2013, okay.
yeah, so we bought a place that was actually a new build, but it wasn't an activated corner lot. It's it's an infill.
Right.
I think quite an attractive infill.
Nice. Of course.
And so we're on 18th Street, and we use the local area all the time. We do the River Park walk every weekend. We go from home to Britannia. We'll actually walk to Sunterra and Britannia and back and bring some groceries.
Oh,
in
nice.
Now we're not in our 30s anymore, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool, but it seems even now still a very calm neighborhood, right?
Huh.
Yeah, there's stuff going on with the infills on the end, and the bungalows are moving, and the whole dynamic is shifting a little bit.
Right.
But it's not in the core, and it's
Right.
not right out in Tuscany, and
Right.
it has its own feel. for
Nice,
sure.
very good. Okay, and you could choose any place in the world. It sounds like you're in your mid-30s, and kids? No kids?
No kids.
So you're like it wasn't schools that drove the decision, or so? Why Calgary? Why Canada? Why not Australia? Why not Thailand? Like, how did you land in? Why Canada? Why?
Well, I think Thailand is a little limiting for either energy sector employment or life as a smooth jazz musician, right?
Right.
Beautiful as it probably is. Australia has an appeal, but it didn't have quite the appeal of Canada. And I think that, even today, despite all the crazy politics in the world, here, south of our border with the US, look at the UK and Brexit, right? Nothing's perfect, we understand that. But there was a definite tie, some kind of affinity with Canada that I still maybe can't fully explain. But it was an obvious choice, and we did look around, and we kind of shopped around, and we figured out what we really wanted out of somewhere.
Okay. Nice.
Calgary then was able to offer that, and still is that today.
Super. You are, and I didn't know this until arriving here today,
Right.
meaning I'm not a great researcher. I just assumed you were a full-time musician.
Right.
And but tell us a little bit about your was Calgary? You came here for oil and gas? Are you in the oil and gas sector in the UK? And you're doing that now. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing and maybe how long you've been doing it.
Yeah. So fundamentally, my sort of business life has been in and around recruitment. So I was a recruiter in central London, recruited in the Square Mile financial district, mainly for accountants who are wonderful people, maybe not the most outgoing all the time. They have this kind of thing attached to accountants, a bit like engineers, I guess. But they're actually very cool. And I was fortunate in the UK to take my recruiting skills with the accountancy knowledge into my real passion of music. So in London I was recruiting finance people for companies like Virgin Records and Sony Records, and I had all these cool media clients.
Wow.
Long story short, where I am today is I work for one of the larger energy producers here in town. We operate obviously here in Canada. We have pretty major operations in the US. And again, my role there predominantly is recruiter, so I'm based within the human resources function. I've also, though, over time been given opportunities to work in the contract management space and vendor management space. I get to interact with our legal teams and our governance teams. So, even now at my age, it's learning every day.
Okay.
With the expectation of, regurgitating that knowledge and building something better tomorrow, which is pretty good.
And when you came here, did you already have a job, or did you come here? Yeah.
I had a couple of offers. I was actually selling a brand of audio video gear in the UK for a while because I love music and I love technology. And so back then, Bang & Olufsen, or B&O as it's known, was a huge deal in Europe. So I actually ran the retail store in Wimbledon Village, which is right where the Wimbledon tennis courts are.
Yeah.
And I had clients, including the Chelsea football players, right? Met the guys that ran the store here in Calgary at the time before we actually moved here, and they said, look, if you're going to move here, we'd love to have you work for us.
Right.
So got off a plane, started work a couple of weeks later.
Really?
And it was funny, the sporting thing.
And working in retail?
Yeah.
And then how did you transition from retail into HR?
Because I'd already been in HR in London with the whole recruitment piece, right? So it was a kind of transition in, transition out. Retail, it's funny, retail has this stigma about it, right? But from a networking perspective, everybody who walks in your literal shop front is probably net new.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you leverage that, right?
Right.
So to this day, I have folks now as friends that were originally clients nearly 15 years ago.
Wow.
Because we connected over music.
Right, you have the love of music, buying that product, or just looking for the best. And
buying and selling anything. It's like buying and selling houses, right?
Yeah.
We've all probably sold houses. Some of us sell houses a lot more than other people,
right?
But it's just the interaction between those people that makes it click.
Cool. Okay. And so what is it that so you came here in 2005, so you've seen the So you came here just before, it sounds like, our economy boomed towards the December of 2005.
Right.
And so you went through all that, and then a bit of a recession, and then 2013 and 14 things picked up again, and things are a little bit on the tougher side of the spectrum at the moment. I guess how is that affecting you, and maybe leading question, what do you love most about Calgary, and what don't you like about Calgary?
Well, I don't think it's a I don't like piece. I think it's an accepting piece. It's the volatility of our little economy within Calgary, because we are so centered on the energy sector.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's a problem, but it's definitely something that you have to accept and ride with, right? If energy's up, everyone's happy. If energy's down, nobody's happy.
Right.
If Trump launches an attack like he did this morning and oil goes up, there's no simple solution to that, right?
Right.
But I think overall, despite the rough time we've had as a city and as an economy the last 4 or 5 years, there is a resiliency here that is very positive. So even when it's a dark day, even when there's been layoffs across the energy sector in downtown Calgary, that's tough for sure. However, we do have the benefit of we're in Canada. We are a generally pleasant people. We have beautiful blue skies, and life could be a lot worse for sure.
Right, interesting. This may be kind of a funny question. In St. John, New Brunswick, they are importing, I'm going to say 250 million barrels of oil a day from the Middle East to refine. And I said to my wife, do you know, actually I didn't say, did you know, because I know she knows, but I said, they're importing 250 million barrels from Middle East to St. John to refine. I said, that's crazy. And she looked at me and she goes, I've been telling you that for years. And the reason why I'm bringing this up to you is I think of you as a global citizen. Anyone who can be in a place and then say, where in the heck in the world will I land or go to? And you choose Calgary, thank you. Does that occur to you? You're living in this place, you've chosen it, and does that bother you, or does that, how does that make you feel? To me, it's just, I grew up here, and I grew up in the East Coast, and I moved here, and now I'm really frustrated by this. Only now. I don't even think I was 3 years ago on that. Have you noticed that since moving here, that we're not really refining our oil?
Yeah, and I think this whole argument has come up time after time around access to markets, right? I think there's also an argument to say, well, define your market.
Yeah.
Because the Middle East did a very good job of defining their markets, plural,
right,
and they continue to service those markets day in, day out. We have some challenges within our own country right now, politically for sure, but again, no country's without those challenges. There's also some geographical constraints to what's going on, because there's some financial constraints. But if you go back 3 to the political constraints and start to resolve those, the rest would actually start to flow a little easier, as with the oil.
Right.
We have great opportunity. There's some West Coast things happening right now that are really going to start to stir the market. The pipeline issues that are talked about, you have to understand and accept that the media will take reality and spin it for the purpose of sales. So what we read, of course, isn't necessarily what's happening all the time.
Right.
And we've seen that time after time in my own company. I think ultimately, there's clearly an issue. We still continue to look at oil from the Middle East. There's fuel from Russia. All these things are going on. But we're also having to make changes to our own companies within Canada as a result of that.
Right.
Because whilst the money isn't going to change and the politics isn't going to change, time won't stand still. So the company I work for right now is actually looking at a potentially huge shift in terms of moving its corporate HQ from Calgary specifically, and Canada in general, to the US. And there are reasons, we can get into those if you'd like to, of course, but fundamentally it's money.
Right.
And it's access to investment pools that we are not able to access as a Canadian company.
Right.
And whilst things are stagnant, time does not stand still.
Right. I've invited you to be on my show today, not because of all that boring stuff,
right,
but more because of you and your musicianship.
Right.
You are a funky, smooth jazz musician. Do I get the funky part right? Or
funky for sure, and smooth. Interestingly, I for years, I guess I avoided the smooth part of smooth jazz.
Right.
Only because the connotations of sort of not so great late 80s saxophone stuff that was piped into hotel areas, and it just didn't feel great. But actually it is fantastic, and the audience is really what makes it fantastic, and I found that from my first album a couple of years ago, and it kind of fell into the smooth jazz radio world, and then here we are today with a much bigger story than the woes of oil and gas.
Right.
I want to go there.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about some of the albums that you've produced. Maybe in the last 3 years you've had some great success.
Yeah.
Like some international acclaim.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you. So the first album that I put out, so I've been on many albums over the last sort of 3 decades plus, right? But the first album I put out under my own name was called Time on My Hands.
Right, I listened to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I called it that. Now you know the full story, the irony being, of course, in my real day job, I have no time on my hands.
Right.
And that first album actually took me 6 years to pull together.
Oh, wow.
Which was painfully laborious, but massively worthwhile when I sit back even today and play it. And I think about some of the stuff that inspired me to write certain pieces of music. What happened with that album, a buddy of mine back in the UK, a guy called Miles Gilderdale. Miles is the front man for a huge smooth jazz act called Acoustic Alchemy.
Okay.
I've known Miles since mid-80s, so a while. And Miles heard what I'd done and said, we should probably get some folks listening to this in the world of radio. Great, I said.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, on that one, he hooked me up with a couple of contacts in the US. We flipped over some digital files. They came back and said, where have you been? We want this.
Yeah.
And so that album got, I think number 2 on the smoothjazz.com global chart. It landed on a bunch of the best of 2017 charts as well. And that was partly my inspiration to say, well, probably I should do some more of this and get it released.
Nice.
And then I was able to pull together a full album, as in 11 tracks, which is what the Sentiment album became.
Sentiment.
Yeah. Somehow I did that in addition to my real full-time day job in 6 months.
Wow.
So it's almost twice the length of the first album. It's far more complex in terms of the acoustic engineering side of it.
Are you doing the acoustic engineering yourself, or is that you're doing it all? You're a musician, acoustic engineer, producing the thing.
Everything.
Wow.
Writing and recording. So, album 1, I was very fortunate. I was able to connect with a guy called Pooji Bell. Pooji Bell, for those who don't yet know him, you need to. He's a wonderful drummer from the US, and Pooji actually played for a bass player called Marcus Miller. Marcus Miller, for those of you who don't know, you should. Marcus Miller was really my inspiration to play bass as my predominant instrument back in the 80s, because he played on the Tutu album by Miles Davis, who you have heard of.
Right, of course.
So I hooked up with Pooji actually through LinkedIn.
Oh.
And I guess he thought I was some kind of business guy. And I said, well, I am, but I also want to do this. And so, a PayPal account and a Dropbox account. He records his drums, flips them over, and that became the first single, which was This Is the Love.
Wow.
And This Is the Love then went on to win the YYC Music Awards People's Choice in 2017.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Kind of a cool year.
Yeah. Very good. Wow. And so, would you ever perform these live?
Yeah.
Where can Calgarians go see it, or when's next?
Well, right now I have nothing planned right now, because I've actually been focused on the marketing of this thing, because it's great to write a track that's okay, and then you can go and record a track and make it okay or better, and then you can release it and hopefully it does well. Then you've got to market it. So I've been heavily involved in that really for most of last year. My plan at this point is to pull something together live in Calgary, probably late spring, early summer.
Nice. Okay.
Now, there's a few options. There's some great venues in central Calgary. There's some newer venues opening up on the outskirts of Calgary. We also have Altadore and Marda Loop and Mardi Gras. And so I'd like to start to look at conversations around how might that work out?
Nice.
I can go out with a band, I can go out on my own with some digital technology and just play a 6-string bass, and it's kind of cool.
Wow.
So, yeah, lots
Nice.
of options.
So 6-string bass, so that is the electric bass.
That's the electric bass with an extra low string and an extra high string.
Oh, because I'm thinking bass has 4 strings.
They usually do, you're absolutely right. So I play 4, that's where most people start.
Yeah.
You kind of progress to 5, which was a thing in the late 80s, early 90s. Still is, obviously. And then 6-string bass is really this concept of extended range. So you're playing bass lines, and then you're playing beautiful low bass lines, but you're also able to get up into sort of guitar range and play lead bass, which is really how my sound has evolved. So
Neat.
guys like Marcus Miller, he's mainly a 4-string player. Another name for you is a guy called Stanley Clark. Back to late 70s, these guys have been around doing their thing. And fundamentally, the concept hasn't changed. It's just the sounds we have available and the technology, right? In the 70s, it was tape, and editing was a Chinograph pencil and a razor blade, and hope for the best. Now it's Control V,
Right.
or Command V, depending on your operating system.
Okay.
So it's insanely fast if you want to get into that space. It's it's cool.
Nice. Well, actually, I have this question that I want to ask. Did you grow up as a musician? Was music lessons in your home? Were you classically trained, or were you like? How did you learn on Guitar Hero? I understand some people do. Like, how did you learn to be a musician?
Well, Guitar Hero, I'm a little older than Guitar Hero.
Okay.
And there are folks out there, both sides of the water, that would probably argue that I never actually grew up. But on the basis that I maybe did grow up, I started actually at the age of 2. Playing piano. So
Piano? Okay.
Yeah, my mother actually still is a concert pianist.
Huh.
And my father was a music publisher.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the odds are you're probably going to end up in the music world.
Right.
So I started on piano. I got into continued piano, and I was playing violin, I think from around 5 years old, maybe 6 years old. And I actually got a scholarship. So my schooling, my education from the age of 7 to 11 was in actually a cathedral.
Music school?
Yeah, York Minster.
Wow.
So York is kind of northeast UK. It's a Roman city. It's like a walled Roman city, the real thing. And the Minster is the oldest Gothic cathedral in Europe. There's actually been a church on that site since AD 79.
Wow.
Most people here, when they hear my accent, think I said 1879, but no, AD.
Wow. This is York Minster.
York Minster, yeah. Worth a Google search.
Do you know, I'm going to just say this now, and I may have to edit it out, but my wife is also a musician, and she used to teach at Central Memorial, Performing Arts. And I think she brought a group of students to the UK, and it seems to me that is it possible she could have brought that group to the York Minster?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll find out this afternoon.
It's a world-renowned cathedral environment.
Right, okay.
But it was obviously very strict, very classical education, predominantly music, but with every other academic subject that you would need at that time, including Latin. I also sang in Latin.
Really?
It comes in very, very handy here in Western Canada on a daily basis, obviously, but not really. I can still
This is fascinating.
So that all happened, and then going back a couple of questions, in the mid-80s, I heard this album by Miles Davis, the Tutu album, and specifically and predominantly heard Marcus Miller's bass, and that's what kicked me in. So
really? And then this is the direction you knew you had to go to?
Had to. It wasn't even a discussion with anybody else or myself. It was, that's my musical voice.
Really?
Right? Even though I'd sung, played piano, and all this wonderful stuff, I see that now as really just a training point to get to 1986.
Wow.
The bass.
Wow.
Go.
So I'm curious, from what I know about music and the musicians, like the jazz pursuit is like, as far as I know, and I could be completely wrong, is like the least paid profession of. Is that true? And what did your parents think of you heading down the bass route as them both being musicians? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know if the jazz musicians are the less paid.
Yeah.
I don't think that musicians, in fact, I don't think that creatives in general are paid as they should be.
Right, I agree entirely.
Right.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think it's tough to say a piece of art is worth whatever, $50,000, but the person that made it, $3,000. That's tough. Even as somebody
It
who's
seems a
worked
little
in
more
retail.
acceptable, though, to pay for art than pay for. Well, I don't know, but I mean, there's just a few. What is it? Is it 2% of musicians actually make it and make a career out of it, and,
Right.
and then the 1%, are extremely, wealthy, I suppose. But yeah, jazz musicians, I think, is more of a challenging versus, well, maybe a classical pianist or even a great violinist or whatever.
I think it's also partly down to audience reach.
But and then you were young and that age, and your parents said, "Oh, he's going for jazz." Did they have any thoughts or comments on that? Were they trying to convince you to be the violinist that they wanted you to be, or anything?
There was a little bit of that.
Okay, that's fine. That was a long time ago, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and jazz violin is actually even a smaller audience than jazz bass.
Right.
So I think I probably won on that basis.
Nice, good for you.
But it's an audience thing, and whatever it is you're trying to sell, there's going to be somehow determined a size of audience that's interested in your product. So whether it's a house or a piece of art or a piece of music. The huge shift, though, for music in general, but specifically to jazz, is this move away from tangible, so vinyl or cassette or CD, to the intangible of MP3 and downloads and streaming,
Right.
which from a reach perspective are fantastic, right? I just got through my Spotify numbers for last year, and there's numbers in there in terms of how many people and how many countries and how many streams I would never have dreamed possible. The downside is that because it's intangible, the money is equally slim.
Right.
That's what is really hurting that industry. So that is the musical equivalent of
Right.
pipeline constraints, right?
Right. All right.
You've
right.
got
right.
this product, and there's a market somewhere, but how do you reach it?
Right.
It's almost impossible.
Interesting. That's a whole nother conversation that maybe we'll have part 2 on.
Sure.
But can our listeners follow you on Spotify? Or how does this work these days? Actually, when I was like, oh, I should listen to some of Brandon's albums before I interview you today, I don't remember exactly what I did, but I think I went to Spotify,
Right.
maybe a link that you sent, or maybe I actually went to your Facebook page and clicked it, I think,
Right.
and it brought me to my, I have Spotify, I have Amazon Music, I sometimes have SoundCloud, but I don't really know how it works. What's the best way to follow you and listen to you in this day and age at this time?
Well, the listening piece is pretty easy. I mean, because we're digital and because we can do stuff at the speed of light, it's everywhere, literally.
Yeah. So we can just search you, right? Is
Yeah,
one way, yeah.
It's all under my own name. There's no sort of band name. So just search first name, last name on Spotify or iTunes, Apple Music,
Right.
Amazon, all those places. Also, things like Instagram, right?
Okay.
So I have Rothwell Bass. You can find me on Instagram there.
Nice.
That tends to be mainly music stuff, although there's some funky shots of downtown from a high rise that I might occupy 5 days a week.
All right.
Our recent trip to Jamaica,
Okay.
things come up, right?
Right.
But it's a cool way to interact, and certainly I encourage contact from people. I know, some creatives think they're reclusives or whatever it may be. No, clearly not.
Nice.
I'm quite happy to chat, and we've
Reach
had
out.
we've had some amazing interactions with folks all around the world in the last couple of years, both for me and for Lisa. I mean, they want to get involved and understand her, and we've had people thanking her for sharing me with them musically.
Oh, neat.
Which is kind of encouraging.
And just a couple more questions. Why or why not are you staying in Calgary?
Well, why am I staying in Calgary? Why are we staying in Calgary? Because we love it, quite honestly. We are proud now to say that we are, I guess, naturalized citizens of this country. It's a huge deal for us. We attained that status back in 2010. So Canada is a general yes. Calgary, we're invested here, right? And we moved here for a reason, and we accept that on the basis that the statement that nothing in life is perfect is true, then this is one of those times where nothing in life is maybe perfect.
Right, good.
But you can influence things, and you can start to make a change. And it's not only volumes of numbers or volumes of voices, but its attitude and its approach. And both of us actually, we still see that here. We see enough hope in people and how people operate. Yeah, I mean, there's crime. Sure, there's crime everywhere. Is there a rise in crime? Some types of crime, for sure, but it depends again on the media and what they want to spin and tell you how good or bad a place is. But we have no intention of moving away from Calgary, and specifically this little piece of Calgary. It's
nice. It's
been good to us. We do what we can to help and support it, and so we don't want to make any changes there at this point.
Nice. Okay, so what? Last question, I think. What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, that is a potentially loaded question.
And I'm curious, as I ask that, like, you're obviously talented in your downtown job because you've kept it in human resources. I don't know how many people are recruiting these days.
Right.
But then the second thing is you're obviously talented as a musician. Like, could you have gone and been a musician your entire life and like been a rock star around the world? Like, actually, so you get to answer the question, Brendan.
I think I will be absolutely open with you on this, and I'll give you a very short answer and explain why. It's 2 words, and my advice would have been be bold.
Nice.
For a variety of reasons. I had some ideas, and I wasn't either capable or maybe just confident in myself at the time to put them into practice. I have been playing music now for, 48 years, I guess.
Yeah.
It's quite a while. And it's only the last 3 years that music has been realized by a large audience. Arguably, I could have done that sooner had I been bold. But what I was doing at the time was what I'd basically been trained and brought up to be, which was restraint and learn your place and learn your skill and learn your craft. So I think I would answer it that way.
Interesting.
But I think I have the benefit of maybe not being too bold in my teens, biding my time.
Right.
Hopefully you have more time left and we can do more of the music over the next X years.
Wow, that's great.
Thank you.
Oh, great. So Brendan, last thoughts in terms of people can reach you, I guess, what are some of the easiest ways? You mentioned Instagram. Tell us the account name again.
Yeah, so Instagram is it's at Rothwell Bass. The easiest way to reach me, quite honestly, wherever you are in the world, is through my website, so brendanrothwell.com. That has news of any live work I'm doing. It has news of news. There's a contact page, so people can literally just jump in there, fire an email, and unless I'm in a high-rise downtown, I'll probably get back to you within a couple of minutes.
Good, wow, okay.
But all my music's available, as we talked about, on all the platforms. Physical CDs as well. I will plug this because the jazz audience is one that does still like to buy the product.
Oh, okay.
So there's a website called cdbaby.com. And these guys, they're based in the US. They carry every type of music. Specifically, they carry a ton of jazz, whether it's traditional or contemporary jazz. And they're very, very smart in how they market this. Certain times during the year, they'll offer you shipping for 1 cent. So you buy any 3 albums, and it's basically free shipping, which for us as a Canadian audience is like a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely push people that way if they want variety. If you're interested in hearing my music on CD, go to my website, shoot me a note. If you're in the local area, if you're in Altadore or Marda Loop or Calgary in general, I'll drive it to you, we'll drop it off.
Nice. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm sure our Calgarians and Altadorians will be pleased to hear that.
Nice.
Brendan, thanks so much for being a guest on the show. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to being more neighborly.
We will do that for sure.
That's great.